The King of Omashu is the 5th episode of Avatar The Last Airbender Season 1, the greatest show of all time, at least in my opinion, and hopefully yours too. That's why I hate to do this, but this episode is just passable at best. It's nothing special, honestly. Both Omashu episodes aren't that great, this one and the one in the beginning of Season 2. Boomy is a fan favorite. I know you don't have to tell me. He is pretty funny and a quirky character, but outside of him, there's nothing else really to latch onto when it comes to story or other character beats. That is why today I would at least try to convince you why The King of Omashu is just a mediocre episode in Avatar's great catalog of hits. But first, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for a new episode breakdown every single week, or check out my last week's episode on the Blue Spirit if you want to hear some positivity, because this will certainly not be that. But without further ado, let's get right into it. The opening of this episode does a great job at world building. We get to see scale for the first time, the city. Before we only been to Kyoshi, which is just a small village, and then the southern water tribe, which is basically nothing. So we get to see this scale to the Avatar universe we haven't seen before, which is great for the lore when we build on governments and how they have a community that is so large that it's just more than a village, which shows it's more advanced than we previously may have thought. We get to see everyday earthbending that we haven't seen this. This is like the episode that introduced earthbending for real, so it's so important to show us ways other than fighting to use these elements, which is one of the things Avatar does best. We get to see the doors opening, we get to see the mail system, that earthbending is not just a fighting style but a way of life and ingrained in their culture, which it would be if it was real, since why wouldn't it be? Why would you not use earthbending? And it's so cool how they build up these villages or these cities in the way the element uses. So the water tribe uses ice, obviously, and then the earthbending uses earth, obviously, and then the firebending using more metal and wood. So it's creative and it shows that world building, and that's what this episode does so greatly in these opening shots. And speaking of that opening shot, I love these scenes with the gang just hanging out, being lighthearted. It's fun, it's fast paced, it doesn't linger, but we get these cute moments. The Aang costume with the Appa's fur is fun, it's cute, and it's classic Avatar, especially season 1, and I love to see it. We get to see our first look at the Cabbages guy, iconic, I just wanted to mention that. And they walk through the city, and we get a great establishing shot of the city, beautiful animation. Up to this point, it's just perfect. We get a flashback scene to Boomy and Aang's friendship, and it's pretty obvious it's Boomy. I guess if you're gonna do the reveal like they do later, you have to have this to have a little early seed planted so it doesn't come out of nowhere. So I guess it's fine. It just doesn't add too much, I believe, and I feel like the reveal later is misused, but we'll get to that later. That leads pretty nicely into the cart ride, which is a fun action set piece, which is Avatar does great. These set piece action scenes that are maybe not fighting anyone, but they are just suspenseful action scenes. That we have one in the previous episode with the koi fish. So here it really hits. The jokes hit. Use airbending guitars and he uses to go faster, and then the ramp obviously is a classic joke. So the jokes really hit, the action is fun, it's suspenseful, the world building is great. So up to this point, up until the gang gets captured by the soldiers, it's almost a perfect episode in my opinion. Or maybe it is a perfect episode, since everything is positive in my opinion, and it does everything so great. We get some great character beats, we get some fun moments, some good side characters, some one-offs. It just couldn't hold up this quality for the whole runtime, and I will explain to you why. First, Aang. He's probably the best part of this episode. His fun-loving side really gets to shine here, and the whole episode kind of revolves around him being a kid versus his duties as the Avatar. But we really, especially at the beginning of this episode, we get to see his fun-loving side. He really gets to be a kid, which is not something that the Avatar, if you have seen that season, the Avatar season did. They just straight into the seriousness. But here we get to see his loving and his lighthearted side, which is so important to establish this early, to see his growth over the season. And it really shows in that first action piece, especially. When it comes to the serious side, it's business when needed. So I feel like Boomy doesn't have too much of a point, really, because he is really serious when he needs to. And these trials he go through, he does them in a creative way and in a fun way, but still in a serious way. So I feel like Boomy doesn't have much of a point in that. So that really drags down the episode. If we move on to the siblings, just to get them out of the way, basically nothing. They stand still the whole episode. They have a little cute scenes, as I said in the beginning, in the opening. But other than that, after they get captured, they basically just stand around the whole episode being captured. So basically nothing. Boomy now, and yeah, I hate to do this, but it's just, he's not as good as people think. I know he is insane. He's really funny, honestly. The old man puns is hit or miss, I guess, but just the vibe is kind of fun. The music, like the carnival music, is just so season one, and I do not like it. It's just too goofy. It's man, and the laugh and things, it just makes the connection too obvious with the Boomy from the past. I wish they maybe reeled it in a little bit and maybe up the wiseness a little bit, I guess, or something else of his trait. The trials that he pulls on is kind of creative and funny, goofy, I guess. But yeah, it's really fun that they do really stupid things, that like getting the lunchbox key, like that's a fun twist, I guess, with the kid being serious thing. So that really is on thing. But they maybe take a little bit too much of the runtime, even though it doesn't take much, but it feels like it takes a lot of time. And it feels so, maybe because they're so pointless, that it makes it go by so much slower. The reveal now, I just wish the reveal was sooner. It's just too obvious, like I mentioned in the flashback, and it just damages rewatchability on this episode. It really hurts it. It makes the whole thing even more pointless, since he knew it was the Avatar the whole time. Then honestly, the Netflix version of Boomy was way more interesting. The jaded ruler that after 100 years of war, it just makes sense that he would be this, and he would be more hateful against Aang in some ways. He's just quirky, and for some reason, with nothing else really, since his games doesn't amount to anything at the end, and the whole dilemma later on in the episode is just, it's very dark for the first time in the episode. And honestly, the dilemma is so weird, since he doesn't have to do it alone. It's so weird for Boomy's character up to this point. So if he was more jaded, like in the Netflix Avatar, and blamed Aang more, it would make more sense for him to hold him there, because he's basically holding him there and denying the chance for him to actually do his duties, which he's constantly or trying to make the point that he needs to be done. Like the whole message is kind of weird. I just wished it was done sooner, to revealed sooner. That would really also be a more interesting dynamic between Boomy and Aang, if Aang knew who Boomy was, and Boomy still was like not letting him go. I feel like that was a bit more of a interesting dynamic between the two, because now I feel like there's not really any back and forth that is interesting. It's just Boomy being a little crazy and Aang not having anything of that. But if they actually knew each other, or Aang knew that it was Boomy, it would be more personal, and personally is what we need. So unfortunately, it did not hold up all the way, which I hoped to. Overall, one of the funnier episodes, fun action, good jokes, both visual jokes and verbal jokes. So it's a pretty funny episode, especially in the beginning. So why is it one of Avatar's worst if it's so funny and has so many good qualities? it just feels like a waste of time. Boomer just plays around for no reason other than insanity, in my opinion. Aang doesn't really learn anything. His fighting style stays the same. He's always been passive. In the end fight, Boomy constantly says like, "Oh, you gotta attack, but Aang always is passive. Until the end fight with Osai, he's still passive. So it doesn't really amount to anything. Although the final fight gives a great showcase of what earthbending can do, so it is really like a demo for what comes after. So that is a great thing, I guess. The reveal, it hurts rewatches. It's too obvious. I just wish they did it sooner. We have some season 1 quirks in here. Sound effects are not the best. Pretty basic characterization, although that is needed, so not a big mark. There's nothing special that this episode brings forth when it comes to character development. It's not the biggest deal, but it's just a little negative, I guess. Animation feels a little off, not in the beginning, but later. Maybe that's just me, but especially like when he sprints in front of Boomy, it's just a weird animation thing. These early episodes have some animation things. I did an episode on, or breakdown on, the Worst of Kyoshi episode, and there we have some weird animation too, so maybe they're just figuring out what style and what works and what doesn't work. But here we have some things that don't work really at all. The ad breaks feels way too obvious, and that's kind of a problem in general through the first season. Maybe that's also just me, but I feel like the ad breaks when you don't have ads and you're just watching it on Netflix, it feels so off, and really breaks the tension almost in a lot of scenes. If I could make any changes, maybe this episode would benefit from being later in the season, have more established character, and especially that would benefit the siblings, so they don't feel like nothing here. Here it's just standing around. So if they had previous character to lean upon, we could have some more jokes or some more dialogue that is short but has some meaning because of previous characterization. We make the lesson learned by Boomy more fitting in the structure of the season if we put it to the end that he has to attack. Maybe if we switch this before the finale, this could be like, oh, he goes more head on into attack, so maybe that could make more sense. But I feel like in general the lesson isn't really learned here. The reveal earlier, like Netflix, more dynamic situation with Aang and Boomer, like I said. Add a B plot. This episode, after that opening that I said was so great, really suffers on the focus being on those trials, which are pretty pointless. We need some Zuko and Iroh action here. If they were just walking around the city trying to find Aang and then they come back in the end like they do a lot of times, I feel like that would really add to the story, and we cut out a lot of these boring scenes with Aang and Boomy if they're gonna go the route that they did. But yeah, if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I will be posting one episode breakdown each Thursday, so comment which episode I should do next. But yeah, until next time, I hope you have a great week.